You've seen the memes. You carefully develop NPCs only to see your players take a detour and fall in love with an NPC you've just made up. Now you have no clue how to move the adventure forward. Players, right? That's just their nature. Or is it? I'm gonna use the location and NPCs I created for my last campaign to show you why that happens, when it's an issue, and the smart solution you can use to prevent that. We know the drill. The characters walk into a tavern, we mention a couple of key NPCs expecting the players will take the initiative and talk to them. But they don't. Instead, they ask who else they can see in the tavern, bubbling spurts by spontaneous generation. His unusual description attracts players' curiosity. They come to talk to him. We start to improvise. Where from? Through the path of least resistance, or the first thing that pops up in any real-life social interaction, personality. And as we had zero prep for that, we make it big. Voice, mannerisms, eccentricities. Exactly what highlights a magnetic personality. Congrats to us. We've unintentionally made Bobbling our own Captain Jack Sparrow. Players immediately fall in love with him. And now we're entirely off track. To add offense to injury, our players had never before fallen in love like that with any other NPC we've actually invested time in creating. We're left with no option but to take serious action and post a meme on our social networks, which has historically solved issues a total of, let me consult my files, here it is, 0 times. So let's tackle that, shall we? Just please don't stop with the memes while we're on it. We'll love them. But wait, is that actually a problem? Well, not necessarily, as long as we're all having fun with it. Exciting sessions can sprawl from the unexpected. But here are 5 cases when it becomes an issue. 1. When it takes the player's focus away, preventing the adventure from moving forward. 2. When we get insecure with the open waters improv we're dealing with. 3. When we're unable to take the session to a similar level as we would with what we had prepped. 4. When we frequently waste time creating NPCs and adventures that are not used. And 5. When players and DM feel the characters were somehow railroaded back to the adventure. Any of that can be much disappointing. Many people think that happens because of the improv characters' magnetic personalities and the key NPCs lack thereof. It's not. A magnetic personality is the cherry on top of the cake. But if we were to spend 3 days creating an NPC with a larger-than-life personality and our players still ignored said NPC, it would still all have been for nothing. Take this lovely comic strip by Jake Boy, for instance. I'll share the author's page on the video description. When building an NPC such as Petrie Periwinkle, the Drow, we think of basic stats, a physical description, voice, accent, and the way he talks. We give him a backstory, a personality, and even magic items. We think of a cool location, and still, the players don't give a f*** and find a random NPC, and we're forced to make things on the go. Why does that happen? Here's why. We were too worried about creating everything we didn't need for an NPC, you world-building freak, and didn't think about the things we actually needed. A clear NPC role and purpose, a strong connection to the story, and an explicit goal for the players to interact with them. That's the actual root of the problem, and it only keeps happening because nobody takes the time to see it. But it's pretty evident. Players were unsure what to do, and that's the only reason they stumbled on Bobbling, who simply wanted to hang there, sipping his ale in peace. But now there's a bunch of obnoxious adventurers in love with him. Yeah, the key NPCs are right over there, but the players have no reason to think they're important. Why are they going to engage them? What for? How? Who told them about the NPCs? What is the bare minimum incentive the players have to interact with them? We didn't think about any of that, and now we're going to spend the next 2 hours with f***ing Bobbling the Goblin as if we were stuck in a 2-hour Seinfeld special.
We're like rats in some experiment.
Well, congrats, and good luck to us putting that back on track. But I specifically mentioned that NPC when the party got into the tavern. Why would the characters not go after him? They should know better. No, they shouldn't. That's not how it works. Besides, if they were to go straight to that NPC, they would do so just because they thought that's what we expected them to do, not because their characters would. So don't you complain to me that your players are not metagaming. Didn't we want them to embody their characters to begin with? That's precisely what they're doing, thinking as their characters. And their characters did not understand the NPC's role, connection to the story, or what their goals were for that interaction. Of course not. We simply mentioned the NPC, so why would they? We thought the players would interact with him just because we placed the NPC there. They won't. Not necessarily. If we are to expect players to engage with key NPCs that we have created, they should know beforehand whom to look for, why, and what for. Let me share how I do that. Raedra, Queen in Exile, assembled an army of loyal followers to march toward the realm's capital and confront the crown usurpers. The odds, however, are not in her favor. She's in dire need of additional military power, but she ran out of allies she can rely on. Or did she? Queen Raedra has one last desperate plan. She will send an adventuring party on an unexpected quest. The adventurers will travel to the arid village of Gwark to carry a message to its 3 orc chiefs, Yvelda, Gothram, and Ilga. The offer? Settlement within the fertile lands of the kingdom in exchange for their military aid against the crown usurpers. Their peoples had clashed in the past when the orc tribes failed to invade the kingdom. The scars of that conflict still burns on both sides, but Queen Raedra trusts the adventurer's ability to build bridges with her former enemies, and the kingdom's fate may be hanging on that. Players will travel to an unknown location, but they know exactly who they're looking for, why, and what for. Though players can meet random NPCs along the way, the strong connections of the orc chiefs with the campaign and the adventure, and the clear goal established for the character's interaction with the orcs, ensures the NPCs will not, or at least should not, be ignored. When you create your NPCs, what is your must-have checklist? Basic stats? Physical description, personality, backstory, voice and mannerisms. None of those are must-haves in my opinion. If I had 30 minutes to prepare an adventure, I wouldn't spend any second with them. They don't move the adventure forward, and we can make them all up on the fly. As for basic stats, that's what the NPC's appendix in the Monsters Manual is for. Here's my NPC creation must-have checklist. 1. Story connection. 2. Character's goals. 3. Encounter purpose. And 4. NPC's role. Story connection is on the top of my list because they're the very reason for an NPC to exist. A story connection may be as simple as flashing some flavor, lore, or mood of our world, or as particular as building upon a player character's backstory. But when we create the 3 Drokhar orc chiefs, it should be clear to us and the party that they are essentially connected to our campaign and adventure plot. If it were not for that, the adventure would not need them to exist. Character's goals is the following item on my list. Without them, players will unmercifully walk by your NPC, and all the other things will have been in vain. In this example, the party's goal is to negotiate an alliance with Yvelda's brother, Gothram, Orc War Chief. This goal should have been clearly established for our players in a previous encounter, so they know what to do and can craft an approach for when they meet Gothram. Next on my list is encounter purpose, and that's the catch, because one thing is what the characters are trying to achieve, their goals, but a different thing is how that encounter will serve the adventure. Of course, it could be pretty straightforward. The players have a proposition, the orc chiefs have their demands, and the players negotiate terms. But what if the purpose of this encounter is to thicken the adventure plot, to the player's surprise? When our players meet each of the orc chiefs, they find they have different demands. Yvelda is receptive to the party offering, but explains that the orc chiefs cannot make such a decision by themselves. Instead, it is subject to direct voting by all tribe members at the Orc Forum, and the characters themselves should present the offer at their assembly. An encounter purpose, in short, is how an encounter moves the adventure forward. I think of it as what information will this encounter share with players. It can uncover new information, unlock new quests, or simply present lore and flavor of the world. But many things are going on in a longer campaign, and sometimes it's hard for players to keep track of them all. That's why I regard highlighting and developing known information as crucial as presenting new information. Last but not least, on my NPCs must-have checklist are the NPCs roles. I first consider 5 broad categories when establishing NPC roles. 1. Patrons provide characters with quests and rewards. 2. Family and friends are NPCs that have previously established relationships, usually through backstories, and support the development of characters' stories arcs in the campaign. 3. Allies are NPCs with whom characters have established or may establish relationships throughout the campaign. They help characters to achieve their goals. 4. Villains and antagonists are the NPCs the characters aim to defeat. And 5. Victims are the NPCs that make tangible for the players the foul actions of the antagonists. Those roles are in no way static. The 3 orc chiefs are former antagonists, turned allies, and then turned patrons as they offer quests for characters to pursue. Within those broad categories, I establish clear roles for each NPC. Yvelda is the political leader of the Drakkar orcs, Gothram is their military chief, and Ilga is their spiritual guide. There are so many things we can build for our NPCs, but our prepping time is limited, and the risk of players skimming past them is always present. I found that if I keep in mind these 4 steps, story connection, characters' goals, encounter purpose, and NPC's role, I can minimize my prepping workload and, more importantly, make sure that my NPCs, especially the recurring ones, serve their essential task, provide the interaction players need to make their characters shine. What if, despite all our efforts to prevent players from ignoring key NPCs, they still run astray and engage with random NPCs? Simple. We use those random NPCs to move our adventure forward. That's another reason why I believe the must-have checklist for creating NPCs starts with their story connections, then characters' goals, and encounter purposes. This approach provides flexibility. If we have clear what connects the NPCs to the adventure and what information or quests they're supposed to share, we can easily have a random NPC take over those roles. If instead we focus too much on the NPC's characteristics, we're left with not too much to do if players pass them by. Let me take you for a short boat ride to prove my point. A small rocky island emerges on the horizon in the center of Lake Terrak. On its base shores, we can see the village of War, a series of wooden huts that cluster on rocky cliffs and hills, connected by a complex system of stairs and bridges, also made of wood. As we approach the island, the wind blowing from the west brings an intense sulfur aroma from the hot pools and geysers. The sound of squawking seagulls mingles with the whistles of sailors. Shipyards, boathouses, and a bustling marketplace contribute to a finer layer of nearly deafening environmental noise. Welcome to Wark in Terrakon water, where life reflects both the hardships and the beauty of the rugged, arid terrain of the Stonelands. We come to Wark with a challenging task: persuade the orcs to join us in a military alliance. Chief Yvelda demands that we speak to her people with our proposition and gains popular support. We have a tempting offer: settlement in the fertile lands of the neighboring kingdom. Crafting a persuasive speech will be essential for that, and we have a few nights to get to know the land and its people to come up with it. There are a few things that we can find out that would be helpful for our task. Work is experiencing a commercial renaissance, but the prosperity accelerated the depletion of the region's limited natural resources. With that, we can establish the 3 items we need. NPCs need to have a connection to the adventure plot of depleting resources, and the encounter's purpose will be to uncover this information. The character's goal is to use that information to craft a persuasive speech. After all, they may have exactly the solution the orcs need: access to fertile lands. Now, it's much easier to develop the NPC's role after that. Chief Yulga is a potential ally, as she is the High Priestess of Malar, the deity of the hunt. If we visit her temple, we'll find that the Gwar community heavily depends on hunting and fishing for survival. They are very devoted to Malar, and the many offerings placed on the temple are a consequence of the current game's scarcity in the region. What if we never visit the temple? Not a problem, given that the point is not meeting Yulga and instead finding about those facts. Any random NPC can do that. As we walk by the streets, 4 female orc hunters carry skinned wild boars hanging on wooden sticks. We can hear them mention that Malar responded to their offerings today, but that days like these are increasingly rarer. If we engage with those random NPCs, they will tell us what we need to know. Or maybe we could meet Chief Yulga at the Queen's Scalp Inn or the sulphurous water pools of Gwark. She doesn't need to be stranded in one location. As long as we prioritize what we want to achieve with NPCs rather than who those NPCs are, players can engage with random NPCs and will be able to advance the adventure nevertheless. Yes, D&D players do get obsessed with random NPCs, but we can take action to prevent or use that in the adventure's favor. DMs tend to focus too much on developing NPCs instead of establishing the 4 core items that move the adventure forward: story connections, characters' goals, encounter purposes, and NPCs' roles. Next time you build an NPC, try that out and see how it goes. If that's useful for you, subscribe and follow our social networks for more content. All links are in the description below. Thanks for sharing your time with us. We are the Deep Dice Press.